Okay, I'm going to talk about another important topic, which I've covered before at clovistar.com and at opinions.clovistar.com. Gun ownership, Second Amendment rights. This is a big one for me. Now, I didn't grow up uh, owning guns, but I grew up shooting guns. My father took me hunting ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Before I was 1 year old, I was up on my dad's shoulders going hunting with him, deer hunting with him. My grandfather let me shoot his guns. My father let me shoot his guns. And then when I grew up, I didn't own guns for a very long time until we moved to California. And when I saw that Obama was starting to push for restrictions on guns, I got my first gun that I owned, my own personal rifle. And I was 33 years old at the time. I got me a 30-30 rifle. And it took me all those years, 33 years, before I ever owned my own gun. And then when I moved to Maine, I bought an AR-15 and was my favorite gun. It was a Diamondback AR-15 223 caliber semi-automatic rifle with all the bells and whistles. Loved it. I ended up selling that one just because we moved a bit, and the place where we moved to doesn't allow that kind of weapon. And I, didn't want to store it, so I sold it. But this guy here, another one of these social justice warriors who apparently opposes guns, but won't own his opinion, stays anonymous, covers his face, doesn't make videos. And I usually just block these people because I have no time for them. If they, one, don't own their opinion, and can easily change their opinion with no accountability, and really have nothing more to say or do than call people fifth grade, grade school names like, what does he say? Your head looks like a preteen chode. That's what he starts off with at 4:06 p.m. yesterday. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I let him comment, and then he explains why he doesn't upload videos. He used to, but then YouTube restricted him, so he removed his videos. This account is old as hell, he says. Apparently he's in one of these gaming communities, like the Counter-Strike gaming community, from what I've researched on the guy. And, he gets in with these people who, tend to troll. That's one of their recreational habits. And that's what he's doing here, calling me these silly fifth grade names. Right now you're not getting your way. Blah, blah, blah. If I came on here challenging one of your views in your videos, you will label it as trolling or you will try to shun them. Blah, blah, blah. I said, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. I said, man, this is a video sharing website. You don't have to come and respond on my videos. You could go make your own video. This is the great thing about YouTube. It's very democratic, very, voluntary. You can, do what you want as far as making a video, have your opinion, spread your opinion, whatever with your opinion. But if you're going to hide behind anonymity, you're not going to get a whole lot of respect from me anyway. But anyway, I did get him to fess up to what he was trying to get to with trolling me. And he went to multiple of my channels. I have, I think, 6 channels on YouTube, and he went to 4 of them and talking about how my head looks like a so-called chode. Anyway, let's see. He says, not really weak, just more internet conscious because of swatting, DOS attacks, doxing. I don't know. I don't know how making a video is going to get you DDoSed or doxed or whatever swatting is. Making a video? I mean, come on. Are you serious? That's going to get you hacked or something? Sure. Now, that sounds like a paranoid delusional claim. I don't know how anybody's going to get your IP address or any of your information by you making a video. However, let's go with that. That's your excuse. Fine. So he says, you want my opinion over the matter? And I'll go by this point by point. You can read it here as I'm letting this be recorded, but you can also go to the comments, and I'll leave a link in the bottom so you can go to these comments. But I responded point by point where he left good points. And so I quoted him, you want my opinion on the matter? You are openly walking around with an open weapon to prove a point. You knew the outcome as to what was going to happen. My response is, in fact, yes, I spoke about the potential outcome along the way to my protest, but I was not afraid or ashamed to legally exercise my rights. His second point, quote, you had your own good intentions in your mind, but didn't stop to think that it wouldn't freak a few people out. And so I realize that most people are not accustomed to exercising their rights, and I mentioned this in the first 2 minutes of my video. I also said that I would probably be stopped by the police. His third point, quote, you were just asking for trouble in turn, kind of making it worse for people wanting to carry a weapon for defense, handgun in their car, whatever. And I said in response, I don't see it that way. In fact, I was working alongside instructions from the governor of our state. You may have never been to Maine, not sure, you were probably from California, but guns are really not that scary here. And then his fourth point, quote, what would have happened if a fellow American seen you walking around like that, seen you as a threat, and shot you without questioning? My response is, I demonstrated immediately to officers that I was not a threat, and they were able to make that assessment without a lot of remaining questions. If the police can react that way, it is no wonder that other civilians also felt that way. No, I was not a threat. It was obvious. However, if someone would have murdered me, then I guess I would have been dead. People die in record rates in Chicago without even carrying a weapon. In fact, weapons are very restricted there. Maine is not that way. And, to go into the points here, first of all, I'm a medical marijuana patient, and they just recently said medical marijuana patients can't have the Second Amendment afforded to them. Even though, it's in the Bill of Rights, it's, constitutionally guaranteed, people having Second Amendment rights. Federal government says, no, because we have this illegal prohibition on cannabis that never was ratified by Congress, never even went to Congress, like alcohol prohibition, the 18th Amendment, I think it was 21 that went through Congress where they ratified that and made that an amendment in the Constitution that alcohol was prohibited. And then it took the 21st Amendment in, what was that, 38 or something like that, that released the prohibition on alcohol. And it took 2 constitutional amendments to change the law on alcohol. Now, marijuana, cannabis, hemp grows out of the ground. It's God-given. Nature, makes it. It's not like a manufactured product. And yet Congress never went through the proper measures to make it illegal, which it took constitutional action to do that with alcohol. So cannabis prohibition is illegal anyway. But they're saying because I have one of these cards, I cannot own a weapon. I cannot own a gun. Well, I own them anyway, and I'm not afraid to show it. And I went down in protest of these laws and other laws. And the main protest was about Lavoy FInicum, who was killed by police in cold blood. They said that it was because he had a weapon. Well, he wasn't brandishing a weapon. And, he had something buried deep down in his coat. They shot him in the hip. And then he reached down to grab where they shot him, and they said that he was reaching for a weapon. Well, it's obvious in what we see in those videos and what we saw in Shauna Cox's video that the police shot him in the hip, and then he went and grabbed his hip. But the whole time, before they shot him, he had his hands in the air. And they say, well, their excuse is because he had a gun. Well, a gun is not illegal to carry, especially in Oregon. They have open carry. They have concealed carry there. And he was not in violation of his Second Amendment rights. That gave them no reason to shoot him. He was not a threat to them. He was going to meet with police. He was going to meet with the sheriff of Grant County. So it's not like he was avoiding police. He was going up there to meet with them. And he was certainly not a threat. And he'd never even been convicted of a traffic violation in his, 55 years of life or whatever it was. He was squeaky clean. You look the guy's record up. He has no record. And so I was just saying, hey, it's not illegal to carry a weapon. And I was proving my point by carrying a weapon. Back, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and before that, there was never a problem with it, And all of a sudden now there is. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. We still have Second Amendment rights. And even if people are too afraid to exercise those rights, doesn't mean that we should be. And doesn't mean that we should be ashamed of it either. And that's all I was doing. I have no record of violence. I have no felonies. I have no, dangerous criminal history. I was out there as a law-abiding citizen carrying a weapon in protest, which is my legal right to do under the First Amendment. And my Second Amendment protected my right to carry a gun. And I was out there in protest of what happened to a man who was a law-abiding citizen who got shot by police for no reason. And I wasn't out there to hurt anybody. I was just out there to show people that carrying your weapon is not illegal, whatever the consequence. And so anyway, back to the points that I have about Maine. Now, in my neighborhood, this guy was creeping around our neighborhood. He was actually supplying heroin to a house four houses away from where we lived on Flag Street in Augusta, Maine. And in Augusta, or just like a couple of yards outside of the city boundaries of Augusta in Manchester, on Christmas, right before I went down to the state house with my gun, this man here killed two people in cold blood, two young adults, over some sort of drug deal went bad on Christmas. On Christmas. This was in 2015. My protest was on February 5th. So just 2 months after this happened, I was out there with my protest. But the governor, was pretty upset about what had been happening in our state. And he made a comment, hey, we have constitutional carry. Go out there and take care of the drug dealers, is what he said. Now, I'm not saying that's what I was doing or what I was ever going to do, but I did let the people know at the house that he was dealing to that if they were going to continue to beat people up in my neighborhood, because they beat up my veteran friend, and he lived right next door, and he came over to our house for refuge, bleeding all over the place. And I went over there. I don't think this guy was there at the time, but I went over there with my rifle, and I told him, hey, I'm not putting up with this in my neighborhood. You come in my house, you're going to end up on your back in a bloody pool, because I ain't dealing with that shit. And then they moved out. It was like a month later they moved out of that house. But I ain't messing around, These people are obviously packing guns, because this guy, and the police told me that he was over at that house that I went to with my rifle, and that he was dealing to that house. And this guy clearly had weapons and owned them illegally because he was a felon. So, it's not like laws keep guns out of people's hands. This guy was a felon, shouldn't have had a gun anyway, killed people with it. Now, if those two people that got shot by him would have had their gun, they probably would still be alive today. But let's look at this thing about how medical marijuana people aren't supposed to own guns. This is bullcrap.
For more than 20 years, fear of crime has catapulted home protection sales ahead of sport hunting purchases. But his new worry comes from a potential type of customer, medical marijuana users.
I think people that smoke marijuana and make bad judgment at times, just more apt to use a gun in an illegal manner.
Last week, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms sent a clarification letter to gun dealers saying firearm sales to people who use marijuana for medicinal purposes is against federal law. 16 states have legalized that drug, and dispensaries have sprouted in many California communities and counties, including Riverside.
Under the federal law, medicinal marijuana or recreational use of marijuana is still a federal violation of the Controlled Substance Act.
The ATF advisory did not come with new instructions for gun dealers. A federal firearms transaction.
And see, this was published in 2011. Since then, I think now is it 23 states with medical? And then there's the recreational states we have, and there's like 4 of those now: Alaska, Oregon, Washington, Colorado. And then D.C. So, since D.C. is not a state, but, 5 territories anyway. No, I mean, I have 2 medical marijuana cards. This one's from Washington State. This one's from Maine. I also have one in California. And I'm not ashamed that I own weapons. And I'll never be ashamed that I own weapons. I have a Second Amendment right. The Controlled Substances Act never went through Congress, was never ratified in the Constitution, never went through the process that alcohol prohibition did. And in my opinion, constitutionally, prohibition is illegal. In general, prohibition is illegal. So, I mean, and I'm talking about all prohibition. I'm talking about opiates. I'm talking about any of that stuff. Now they've made kratom illegal. Kratom, of all things. Kratom's been used for thousands of years in medicine. Nobody's ever died from it. And now they're making it a Schedule I drug. It's just out of control. And, I'm not putting up with it. I have constitutional rights, and I'm not afraid to exercise them, and I never will be. I live in states where it's legal. I have my legal authority. There's 10th Amendment protections in those states, so I'm not worried about it. But anybody who is fearing the wrong thing. The thing you should fear is the prohibitions themselves, not guns, not marijuana, not kratom. I mean, come on, people. The thing that makes these drug dealers actually exist is the prohibition. You get rid of prohibition, these drug dealers go away. You know, and I think nullification is the route, not legalization, but nullification. Anyway, let's look at so Maine gun deaths. Maine is a constitutional carry state, meaning you can conceal carry, you can open carry, you don't need a permit. And look at the gun violence per 100,000. Maine is 9.4, the United States is 10.3, so Maine is well under the national rates. You know, Alaska 19.2, Louisiana 19, Mississippi 18.3, Alabama 16.9. You know, and you look at places like Maine, we're number 30. Oh no, wait, we're even lower. We're 38 on the list for gun violence. We're way down there. And I think that, you know, Maine having constitutional carry is partially why. Like I said, if those two kids that got killed on Christmas would have had their guns, I don't think they'd be dead right now. I think this fool would be dead, but I don't think they would be dead. You look at Maine's murders per here we go. Maine gun murders rates per 100,000 inhabitants. So that 9.4 rate is a little different than this rate. Go over here. So Maine, and I've highlighted it, is 0.8 per 100,000 people. Right? Look at California, where guns are highly regulated. It's 4 times as much. It's 3.4 people per 100,000 inhabitants are killed by guns in California. And they have the high, I lived in California. I got my first gun in California. And they have very restrictive gun laws there. And yet 3.4 per 100,000 people in California compared to 0.8 in Maine. That tells you a few things. So I think, you know, when you look at the numbers, Maine is doing very well, and they have completely open carry, constitutional carry, no permit needed. And they have 4 times less gun deaths than California does. And that's, you know, one of the reasons I went out and protested. I think it's very, very important to protest stupid laws. And as far as these anonymous trolls, listen, man, if you're too ashamed to make a video and state your opinion, then I don't have time for you. I made a little time here because this is a good point to make, and it is a concerning issue to me. Check us out at clovisstar.com, and check us out also at clovistribe.com. Peace out.